Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that Varsity Search is currently conducting a search for a 3 to 6 year construction litigation associate. This would be in Dallas. So if you or someone you know might be interested, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Reminder, we're also doing a search for Hedrick Kring, a high-end litigation boutique in Dallas as well. And so you can go to varsitysearch.com/lawyers to see that job posting, as well as at our LinkedIn page, or as again, you can email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, wanted to follow up, I think not last episode, but 2 episodes ago, addressed the issue regarding race at the beginning of the show. Appreciate the feedback from that and want to continue, as I said at that time, to keep that issue on the episodes and in the podcast as it continues to move forward here. One of the things I wanted to mention, this is obviously the week of George Floyd's funeral in Houston, and I think one of the things that I'm starting to see and feel, maybe you are as well, that there continue to be obviously peaceful protests. There continue to be conversations and news coverage. But as these things often do, there is also a sense of there was a crest in the energy at some point that is sort of at a critical juncture, I think, in terms of whether it kind of goes back down and things start to return to normal versus the energy stays where it was, and there's a more of a plateauing effect, and people continue to talk, to discuss, to listen, to act, and to keep the issue at the forefront. And I think it's important that we do what we can to make it the latter of those scenarios, and that we continue to keep the momentum of the issue alive, and not let things return to the way they were before this all happened. And so that's been on my mind in recent days. And then also I would say that I hope that you are taking and have been taking opportunity to search within yourself, to ask hard questions, to get educated. I know I've been working to do that. I need to do more, and as well as looking at actions and ways to get involved and to influence those in my sphere. And so I hope that you're doing that as well, and would love to hear from you about things that are happening in your world and in your sphere, and things that you've learned, ideas and suggestions that you might have. So if you've got any of that, email it to me, or send it on Twitter at Daniel Hare or daniel@varsitysearch.com. Let's continue to keep the energy alive. It may not be that there's a protest every single day as there was for a week or two. That doesn't mean the same energy can't be there, and the same focus and the same momentum on the issue and the same resolution to, or resolve, I should say, to act and to improve on this can't be kept at the same level. So, all right, I will leave it there for today as we transition to this week's conversation. And for the first time in a month, we are not in Houston. Instead, we are in Arlington to visit with our guest, Brandy Austin. Brandy leads her own firm, the Brandy Austin Law Firm, and she focuses her litigation practice on personal injury, business disputes, probate, contested family law, as well as other matters. Brandy has racked up numerous awards and honors over her 12 years of practice, including Super Lawyers Rising Star 4 years in a row. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with Brandy Austin on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. All right, everybody, Brandy Austin joins us right now. And Brandy, thanks for taking the time to join us. I know things are crazy and you are very busy, and we're very appreciative of you taking the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share what's happening on the legal front from my point of view.
Absolutely. Well, and before we hop into what you do in your practice, because I want to learn more about that, I know our audience does as well. Talk to us a little bit about how COVID-19 has been impacting you and your clients. What's first of all within your law firm and kind of in running a small business, really in the midst of a crisis like this? What has that been like with your staff, with your other lawyers, and just what's that been like?
It's something I didn't think I would have to experience so quickly. We are 95% remote now. I ran my business, tech forward, I would say, compared to other law firms. Mine's not completely automated yet, but we were able to pick up and move it 95% remote. And the 5% remaining has to deal with clients who demand that they bring in paperwork or demand that we accept payment from them in person and give them a receipt. So it's small customer service things as opposed to large things.
Yeah, for sure. How has your staff managed that transition to the remote working? I'm sure that's easier for some than others, perhaps, but how has that gone over, and how have you made that work?
You would be surprised at who works well remote and who doesn't. When I started, I'm like, these people are 100% going to be able to stay on task and get it done. And those people have completely just fallen off the mark.
No.
And then others will, they're getting more work accomplished than they ever did in a whole week while working in office. So it's very strange to see that. Some people are, we all had a little struggle at the beginning of the transition because we had to cope with an entirely new environment. People had to set up their home offices, and we gave them computers and everything and paper and envelopes and all of the basic office stuff we had to provide for them. They had to find a place. They had to find arrangements, like where's the quiet place in my house. So I would say we went through a 2-week transition, but now that we're here, I have a lot of people who don't really want to come back on a regular basis.
Right.
So we went from having a big office building, 2 locations, and one of them was a rather large office building, to really only needing 4 or 5 offices.
Yeah. It's so wild. And for listeners, for context, we're recording this in the middle of May. It's May 14th. You're listening to this later than this. And we know that things change so rapidly with this thing, and with the economic ups and downs and stay-home orders and what businesses can do what and all that. So by the time you're listening to this, we may have to add some more context to it because it may have been changed, but that's where we are right now, mid-May. And you mentioned some of your clients who like to really have that hands-on customer service type experience or pay, in person. What has it been like working with the clients through the midst of this?
I would say 90% of them are fine. So it's interesting. They don't require an attorney to show up in person or a paralegal, but they want their reception person to be there to accept their things when they need it. Other than that, they've done well. I'll say that across the board, when it comes to new cases coming in, we don't have nearly as many personal injury clients, right? Because no one's driving. So there's no car accidents.
Right.
Or there are limited car accidents.
Right.
All the stores are cleaner. So there's not as many slip and falls.
Yeah.
People aren't going out to other people's houses. So there's not dog bites.
Right.
Our personal injury declined significantly, like by 90%.
Wow.
It's starting to come back up a little bit, but it's not back to what it was yet.
Man, that's amazing. And I imagine that there are potentially other things that are going on that people just aren't initiating the process yet. Just they're waiting or whatever, delaying because they just until it gets safe or whatever. So the combination is just incredible. The cases that you do have and that from the other areas are things that maybe were already in the pipeline. What has been going on within the court system and just the bar that you've been working in, whether that's in Tarrant or Dallas or some of the other places you work in? How has that been going, and what's the current status, I suppose, of what's happening in front of the courts versus remote and online and all that?
So today,
again, May 14th. We always got to say that.
We have remote Zoom hearings. We have contested Zoom hearings. I've called witnesses. We've exchanged evidence via Zoom hearings. There are some courts that are within Dallas, I don't know about Dallas, within Tarrant County that are just refusing to do them. Right now, they're going to wait and see. I try to set jury trials. I have one set. I had to reset one, and I had it reset for October. And the judge told me that there's a potential it won't go because they're expecting there to be like a flu season, like a coronavirus season in the winter. Yeah. So they're preparing for not having jury trials. And there's also talk about signing a waiver to go to in-person hearings. So all parties involved would have to sign a waiver to go to the courthouse. Wow. Otherwise, they could do Zoom hearings. None of this is set in stone yet. So these are all things that have come from the courts. It's information the courts have sent, but there is no universal path. So it really is, we have a list like, this number court will do this number court won't do that. We don't file for certain hearings unless we file in the court and get assigned a court and then decide whether we need a hearing or we can get a hearing in that court.
Wow. We already had local rules in some of these courts, but now this is just a whole other layer or level, right, of local rules.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, have you learned anything in these 6 or 8 weeks we've been doing this that you feel like even if we go beyond COVID, hopefully we do sooner than later, but that will change your practice, change the way you do things, that you've learned new stuff, or even just things that we do remotely like we've been learning. But what have you taken away that you expect to stay with you?
I am not going to make everybody come to the office all the time. One, it costs me more money to provide space for them to come to every single office every single day.
Right.
So I don't have to do that because we're effective outside of the office. I will say quick hearings. I have done a Zoom hearing in 30 seconds, and this is something that would have taken me 3 hours. So like an hour to get up to the courthouse, leave my office, go over to the courthouse, sit in the courthouse, wait my turn, come back to the office, reintegrate myself into whatever I need to work on. So that would have taken 3 hours. I completed it in 30 seconds and moved on with my day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's huge in terms of efficiency and just value for clients and your time. And so, hopefully we're able to sort of make that more part of what we do normally.
I wish.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, let's transition away from COVID and just learn a little more about you, your practice. We've kind of referenced it a little bit in terms of some of the PI work. But tell us more about your firm and what all you're doing. I know you've expanded over the time that we've been working together, known each other. So tell us what's going on.
Well, I have a general practice firm. So right now there are 4 attorneys. I think we have a total of 15 employees. It fluctuates probably every 3 months or so. The number changes up or down, depends on, people. We have people that want to go to law school and people who want, regular things, more money, want to move, that sort of thing. But we have a general practice law firm. We do personal injury and family law. I would say those are a big portion. Then we do probate and estate planning and business litigation. And then I have an attorney that does bankruptcy and one that does criminal law.
Yeah, yeah. And are there things with regards to especially the either PI or family, which I make up a lot of what you guys do? Are there things within those practice areas, kind of, again, setting aside COVID and everything, but are there things going on in those practice areas that are either novel or things that you're keeping an eye on, new trends, things that are that young lawyers who are primarily our audience here should be paying attention to if they're in this field or looking to get into it?
Personal injury changes every legislative session, and I
Right.
cannot stress this enough. There, people will say, oh, they'll practice family law or something, and they'll have a general practice, and they'll say, oh, I could take a PI case. Okay, great. But understand that whatever you're using may be outdated. It changes every legislative session. The requirements, like we're required to file affidavits now within 90 days of an answer getting on file from the defendant. That's something that's brand new. It used to be 30 days before trial. So it all depends on when your case was filed and what the progression is. So I would say if you're interested in personal injury, you really need to focus on the legislative sessions and be a part of it. Like get in there and provide your feedback to certain organizations that are arguing one way or the other. I mean, the little guy gets screwed a lot in legislative session. So it's important to have your voice heard and just kind of pay attention to that. And when it comes to family law changes as well, just not as frequently and not as broad. Right. And it's interesting because each individual county has this like unspoken ability to just kind of make up their own interpretation. And until it's challenged, that's just what it is. And so what looks like a pretrial hearing in Tarrant County is not the same thing as a pretrial hearing in Dallas County. So local rules and understanding how each court works is really, really important. Like that's fundamental. So when I'm interviewing people, I say, have you ever practiced in this county? Have you ever practiced in that county? So what is your knowledge? Like in Johnson County, you just call them. You just call them and you talk to them. And that's it. That's what you do. Yeah. But in Tarrant County, you have to file stuff. In Dallas County, you're lucky to get a court date because they have such a huge docket.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. Again, back to the kind of, we were laughing earlier about the local rules, but it's true. I mean, every court in every county is in some ways its own complete jurisdiction. Well, and specifically on geography and location, I know you've added a Dallas presence. You mentioned that earlier on top of an Arlington headquarters where you've been. How would you describe the practice in Arlington and maybe kind of even distinguishing it to the extent it is different from whether it be in Fort Worth or in Dallas? I know a lot of times we group everything together. It's DFW or the area, whatever, but those of us that do this for very long know there's a big difference between especially Dallas and Fort Worth, but we maybe don't get into the dissection of Arlington and maybe some of the other areas like that. So what's that been like and how would you describe it?
So when I first started to practice family law in Dallas, there was this attorney that filed a motion against me, and it was seeking attorney's fees, that I was doing all these things wrong, and I didn't, investigate my case, all of this stuff, right? I think I'd had maybe 10 or 15 cases there before, nothing, I wasn't there for years at that time. And I called him up and he's like, well, no. That's just the motion we file with every one of our pleadings. Like, what? Are you kidding me with this? In Tarrant County, I filed a motion like that against an opposing counsel that I had worked with multiple times, but he really did kind of mess things up. And, there were a lot of extenuating circumstances and he freaked out. He was like, I have never had anything like this filed against me. So it's night and day between Dallas and Tarrant County. It is not one. It is night and day. And a lot of people, depending on what they want, prefer to be in Dallas County. So, I talk a lot about family law because, in personal injury, district courts, county courts, obviously jury trials get better results in Dallas County, but it's not a huge difference. There's not going to be a huge difference in the actual procedure of litigation.
Right.
In family law, it's 100% different. Like it's just night and day, practicing with the people in Tarrant County and the people of Dallas County, and just the speed of which you get things done and the requirements that each court has. Like it's different by number in Tarrant County, whereas in Dallas County, it's kind of uniform just because it's so large and they have such a high volume of cases.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, It's interesting for sure. Okay, so I want to have you go back and reflect a little bit on your early years in practice and share with our audience maybe something that you learned as a young lawyer that has stayed with you throughout your career and is an important part of who you are as a lawyer today.
So I would say that imposter syndrome is a real thing, and that, just because you feel that way doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. I always felt like I was failing, or I didn't know what I was doing, or I was doing it wrong. The reality is I wasn't. I just didn't understand that not everybody, the law is not black and white. I know we say it is. I know we say it is. But
Right.
in litigation, what I do, it is not black and white. There are certain things, yes, like you can't beat your children and then get primary custody. You can't run into the back of someone and then make them pay you. You can't do those things.
Right.
But how you get from point A to point B, it is completely selling your interpretation of what the black letter law says.
Yeah. No, a good lesson for sure. Is there something that you've discovered lately, maybe within the last couple of years, that you wish you had known that would have been good to have in your pocket as a young lawyer?
Would have been good. Asking for help from other attorneys that you don't practice with. They're willing to give it. They will give it to you. You call them and they will give it to you. It's amazing. I always, when you're younger, you're like, oh, I don't want to interrupt their day. I don't want to call them and do this. Give them a call. But the worst they can say is no. And then you just go down the next person on the list and call them. I would say before you get to the third or fourth person, you're going to get your answer, or at least pointed in the right direction. Another thing is, like for personal injury lawyers, they have these organizations like the Texas Trial Lawyers Association. Now, when you're thinking about, oh, do I want to join a group? I don't want to pay the fees. One, if you call the organization, they will try to help find a sponsor for you if you're new. But two, they have this thing called the listserv, and you just put your questions on there. And people send you documents, so you don't actually have to draft them from scratch.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. I would say it took me I didn't learn that until like 4 or 5 years ago, but I will tell you, I have a well-stocked portfolio of trial briefs for any reason.
Wow. Yeah. I think I'm so glad you mentioned this because for maybe some of the more public reputation of lawyers being tough and hard-nosed, and we certainly are that when we're advocating for our clients and all of that. At the same time, I think for the most part, that the legal community as a whole is more of a mentoring and growing and helping one another type of profession, because I think it's advantageous for everyone to have someone competent on the other side. It just makes things easier, makes things go better. So I think that's right. And, even just thinking about, listservs, like the Texas Lawyers Facebook group, where I see a lot of help being exchanged back and forth, and people then leaving their personal contact information for follow-ups. And I just see it happen every single day. I think you're right in that, maybe it doesn't strike all of us as maybe young lawyers to think that that's a good thing to do or a right thing to do, to be asking a lot of questions from others. But it is. And it's there. The resource is there. So you mentioned earlier you have a handful of lawyers with you now. You've had others over the years. What's something that, or some ways that associate lawyers, associate attorneys can stand out and impress you in the way that they go about their work and do their jobs?
Having a good work ethic, like coming in, doing the work, like spending the time to actually do the work, look things up and present. If you have a problem, show me that you attempted to resolve it, and ask if that's the right solution or if there is a better solution that maybe we could work on together. Because if you just come to me over and over and ask me to solve your problems for you, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. I think that's good. And we hear all the time from I think the way that the last guest put it that we talked about this was putting out work to your partner or your supervising attorney as if they could just sign it and send it out, and that you've taken the time, attempted to solve all the problems, even though that probably won't go out like that.
No, it won't.
but get it to that point where you feel like you could not leave anything on the table. What about from what are some red flags that if a lawyer's doing this, you just kind of know, okay, if they can't fix this, it's not going to work out, or just this is going in the wrong direction.
I would say entitlement issues are the biggest problem that I see in the younger workforce. Those that have just graduated, they feel like they're entitled to have a paralegal or a legal assistant file things, or these people are supposed to draft certain documents. They shouldn't have to worry about drafting a notice of hearing. At the end of the day, as an attorney, I am responsible for every aspect of my case. If I do not know how to do what my paralegal or legal assistant knows how to do, then I am not effective at my job. And so I make sure, yes, maybe 5 years from now, you don't need to draft your own notices of appearance or whatever basic document it is. But if you are first starting out, you must know how to do these things. You must demonstrate that you have been able to do them. You know when they're supposed to be drafted. You know when they're supposed to be filed. You know how to draft and you know how to file, because inevitably something will happen at 7 p.m. and you're not going to call a paralegal or legal assistant on the phone late at night to have them file something for you because you couldn't be bothered to learn. So entitlement is an issue that we do run into quite frequently, but we try to screen for that before they're hired.
Yeah. And I want to transition to that in just a second. One follow-up to that, with regards to some of the tasks that that a paralegal or legal assistant can do, it's we talk about this sometimes when, especially as a young lawyer, and you come into a firm where there's been a paralegal or a legal assistant there for a decade or more. A lot of times they know a lot more about the technical or practical maybe ways of dealing with the court and filing stuff than you do as the lawyer, even though you're the one with the license. And so thinking about what we were saying before about seeking advice from those in the bar and lawyers and that kind of thing, your own paralegals and staff in the building can also be a great resource, can't they?
Yes. Oh my goodness. If you would draft a document and send it to your paralegal and say, does this look right to you? I mean, it would solve a lot of problems, because the paralegal is going to come to me and say, oh, he drafted his own document. It wasn't perfect, but man, he did try. And that's enough. That literally is enough.
Yeah. And it takes some, whether it's humility or just self-awareness or self-respect or, confidence and all that, to be able to say, hey, this person is not a lawyer, but they know more than me about this right now. And that's a positive thing for sure. So you talked about this when screening and hiring. So when you are looking to hire, maybe starting with the screening on the front end in terms of resumes and just the kind of documents that you might review before you get a chance to meet somebody. What are a couple of the key things that you're wanting to see? What are a couple of key things that are red flags on documents?
Well, I am one of those people who put out an ad and I say, if you want to apply for this position, send it to me in PDF format. If it's not PDF format, I don't look at it. So that's the big red flag, because there's no attention to detail. You didn't take the time to read the instructions for applying for the position. So what do I look for? Unfortunately or fortunately, I guess, I'm one of those people. I'm looking at a lot of resumes, and if I'm weeding out things pretty quickly. If it's visually interesting, I will stop and look at it no matter what. I had a guy once who did this flow chart resume with bubbles and all sorts of things. It was very intricate. You could click on things. It was great. I didn't hire him. His flowchart ability exceeded his legal knowledge.
Right. Well, he played to his strengths.
Right. But, I stopped and I showed somebody else because it was just so extravagant. And there was a phone interview just because, it was so interesting. So if there's something that's different or interesting, then I'm going to stop and look at it. Aside from that, I like to see that there's been at least some legal position, whether it be an internship at a law firm or whatever. You need to have been in a legal environment at some point so that you understand what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of things that just made me smile as you were talking about them. The PDF thing, and feel free to disagree with this, but just one other tip that I would give the lawyers as they're sending in resumes is to have your file name include your name. I see so many PDF resumes that just say resume, or like 2020 resume, or law school resume, or law firm. Sally Sims resume is so much more helpful in the file name of the document, and so I would give that little note. And then, also on the extravagance of the resumes, I think that's something obviously most career people would tell you not to do, like super crazy things. But the caveat to that is, there are some places and some firms and some people that are going to naturally be attracted to certain types of unique, whether it's resumes, cover letters, or even interview styles and interviews. And so it's sort of one of those things where that you may eliminate yourself from consideration by doing something like that, but at the same time, from a certain group of people that just only want to see kind of the typical resume. But at the same time, you might really be kind of finding those key few people that you'd want to work with, and that may be the right people for you to work with. So it's a higher risk, higher reward type of resume, I think, when you do stuff like that. So well, good. Okay, so what about when you get into the actual interview process? What are a couple of things maybe you're looking for there, and a couple of red flags?
Oh, I have my office administrator call. I think she's got a fancy title, but I have her call and do the interview first.
Okay.
So that she can screen them for basic entitlement problems, because they become evident over the phone. Older attorneys. So again, we are very technology based. So can you do a PDF? Can you digitally sign a document? Can you upload your documents to our, case management software? If they can't do that on their own, they're not going to be a productive team member, because that's how our entire firm is set up.
Right.
So do they demand that they have, paralegal? So if you come from big law, we call it, then you've had a paralegal, a legal assistant, a legal secretary. In small law firms, legal secretaries are not legal secretaries. We don't have any. There are none at my office. We have legal assistants and we have paralegals. Our legal assistants aren't dedicated to one person. The paralegals, there is a specific paralegal dedicated to the department or the area of law, and that's just what they do. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 in that area. But legal assistants kind of have the ability to float around a lot of times. So if somebody comes and says, well, I need this person, this person, and this person, we're like, we are not the firm for you, but thank you for taking the time.
It's so true. It's just a totally different environment. So, I talk to big law firm lawyers about this when we go through processes of when I'm working with small firms and helping them hire. Just make sure they're aware of all those things, and they really know what they're getting into when they transition out of the big firm into the small firm. There are a lot of positives, but a lot of differences that they may not immediately enjoy or understand, and it takes some getting used to, which is all fine. But it's more just making sure they're aware of it and are willing to adjust, because it'll be different type of practice. Well, we're winding down our time, and I do have our rapid fire questions to end with, but I wanted to give you a chance, if there's something that we haven't covered that you think is important for our audience to know, feel free to share, because I don't want to leave anything off the table here.
Mental health is a big issue in the legal world, and I see it from, with my younger associates, I see it from the ground up. For my older associates, I see how it's affected their life. And there is no client, no business, no license worth, sacrificing. I won't say happiness, because we are not all happy practicing law, right. But I will say, worth yourself. Make sure you take time for yourself. start doing that very early on. Set boundaries, set hard boundaries. Make sure that you have reasonable outlets for anxiety. The practice of law comes with anxiety. It is just, that's all it is anxiety. Anxiety about, is this client going to be there? Am I going to lose? Remember, there's a winner and loser in everything. It's all about framing it with the client.
Right.
But really focus on yourself and maintaining your mental health throughout your entire practice time. I think that you'll find yourself happier in the long run.
Good advice. I'm glad you mentioned it. We talked a little last time. I say last time. People listening to this, it would have been about a month ago, but about substance abuse and some of the work TLAP is doing. And so I'm glad that you brought this back up today, because I think it's really important to kind of keep hitting on it and making sure people are aware of being aware of their potential issues, but also the resources that are available to help them through it within the profession. And so I'm glad you did that. Thanks. All right. Rapid fire questions and answers. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. Name one trait or characteristic you most want to see in an associate.
Diversity.
Awesome. What habit has been key to your success?
Showing up. Just show up.
Just show up. Your favorite app or productivity tool?
My MacBook. I do everything on it. I can run my entire law firm from my MacBook. Also my phone, but mostly my MacBook.
Yeah. Your favorite social distancing activity? What's something you weren't doing 2 months ago that you're doing more of now?
My husband and I are building a playhouse for our kids.
Yeah.
From scratch.
Oh,
so I would
go.
say that has been really entertaining, but mostly it's DoorDash. I was doing that 2 months ago, but I really like food. So DoorDash.
Yeah, for sure. No, but that's two good ones right there. And then lastly, favorite legal movie? Toss
up between The Devil's Advocate and Legally Blonde. I don't know.
That is so great. So we just did Legally Blonde deep dive on the show. It was released, if you're listening to this now, it would have been about a month and a half ago. And a ton of fun to do that one. And then Devil's Advocate's on the list, but we haven't done it yet. So I'm glad you mentioned it. It's very, very good. So we'll be getting to that too. Well, Brandy, thank you so much for taking time. Really appreciate you being with us and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. My thanks again to Brandy Austin for joining us on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do a couple of things for me? Number one, would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then number two, would you rate and review the podcast in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts? That'll help others discover the show. If you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, or I should mention as well, I don't think I've mentioned this before, if you or someone you think would make a great guest on the show, I would want to hear from you or them. So shoot me a note, Daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget, we have 2 searches going on right now, both in Dallas. We've got a construction litigation associate as well as a business litigation associate. And so if you've got, that's Hedrick Kring, the last one there. If you or someone might have interest in either of those, please do email me, Daniel@varsitysearch.com. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel here with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.